Hello, my name is Peter Evans, and I'm the managing partner of Evans Disability. Today, I wanted to talk to you about the Function Report Adult, also known as Form SSA 3373. It's an 11-page questionnaire that you get at the beginning of your application for Social Security disability benefits. And we get a lot of questions regarding this form. And today I wanted to create an instructional video for our clients on how to sort of think about this form, how to attack this form, and how to get to it. So before I get started, as many of you know, I've been doing Social Security law since 2001. And during that time, I've done thousands and thousands of cases. And so the only reason I mention that here in today's video is because I have an opinion that I think the majority of my colleagues that do Social Security law have a similar opinion. But I have an opinion that not every single Social Security lawyer will have. And, you know, I have other colleagues who have a differing opinion about this particular form. So it is my opinion that this form is not a make it. It's not going to make your case, but potentially could break your case. And it's used more against you than it is for you. I know some lawyers believe that this form potentially could be a make it or break it type of form, but it's a very subjective form, meaning it's sort of your opinion on what's going on. And I'm of the strong opinion that without objective medical evidence and medical records, your case is going to be extremely difficult to win, no matter what you have to say. But I do think this form needs careful attention because I've seen it used against people if not filled out correctly. And so that's why I want to go through this video and give you all the tips that you need in order to fill this form out correctly. So again, that's just my opinion, which I believe the majority of people who do what I do would share. But let's go ahead and jump into this. So you get an 11-page questionnaire. So first, what's really important is it says, hey, if you need help filling out this form, complete as much of it as you can, and you can call Social Security and ask them for help. Do not call Social Security and ask them for help. That is the last place you want to call. You call our firm and ask us for help. But do try to get this form complete as much as you can. The other thing that's really important is that do not leave any answers blank. If you don't know the answer, you can write none or does not apply or NA, N/A for not applicable. Don't ask a doctor or a hospital to complete this form. Our firm does not complete this form for our clients. A lot of it is because we don't know the answer. And frankly, this form is going to take 2 to 3 hours to fill out. I filled out a sample form here today, and lucky enough, I don't have any disabilities, and it still took me 2 hours just to fill out a sample form. So you're going to want to set aside some time. As you go through this form, just fill out as much as you can and take your time. When you get tired, come back to it. I also think before you fill out this form, what's really important is I would encourage you to write down 2 lists and answer this question: why can't I work? Why can't I work? And so you're going to make 2 lists in doing that. On one side, you're going to have diagnoses. You know, what have you been diagnosed with? And number them from worst to best. 1, 2, 3, 4, however many diagnoses you have. And on the second side, you're going to have symptoms, right? And so number that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from worst to best. Do that first before you tackle this form. And the diagnoses will help, and the diagnoses and the symptoms will help you better phrase your answers. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So the first 2 pages are instructions, and then you get to the 3rd page. So page 3, as you can see, and I'm going to make this just a bit smaller so we can get it all on one page, is general information. So give your first, middle initial, and last name. I go by Peter, so I just wrote out my full name. Give your Social Security number, your daytime phone number, and where do you live? House, apartment, group home, boarding house, nursing home, shelter, or other, like you're homeless. If that's your situation, you might live in a basement, just whatever your situation is, there's a box to write it in. With whom do you live? So if you live with family, which would be, a significant other, a wife, your parents, brother, sister, any family members, or do you live with friends or alone? And then section B, which is number 5, this is the first time, and this is the one where if you look at that list, that homework assignment I just gave you, writing down your diagnoses and writing down your symptoms, that would be helpful to have in front of you. So this is the first time you get to sort of write a short little essay about why you're disabled or what keeps you from working. And so to tell your story. And so in here I wrote, I'm a 46-year-old man. I have a GED. And so a couple of things to know is that your age is important, your education, and then the work you've done in the last 15 years. And so those are the things that, are really important. So, here you do just a quick general outline of it. I'm 46. I have a GED. And for the last 15 years, I've worked as a receptionist, cashier, and construction work. And along the way, you'll get a work history form where they ask just for job titles. I think it's okay to put down your job titles here and then write down your diagnoses. I've been diagnosed with degenerative disc disease, fibromyalgia, and diabetes. Okay. And then I've been out of work for over 1 year due to severe pain in my back. And so this is symptoms, because degenerative disc disease, the symptom of that, and a symptom of fibromyalgia is pain. But you want to be specific. Pain where? And so here you want to say severe pain in my back, my neck, my legs, my arms, my hands, and my feet. I also have severe neuropathy in my hands and feet. And so neuropathy would be a diagnosis. And then you want to say where is the neuropathy? Just like with the pain, where is the pain? And then you want to talk about the sensations, or what does it feel like? And so here on number 5, I wrote the severe neuropathy in my hands and feet, the burning, and underneath that I wrote continued. Because if you look back up here at the instructions, if you run out of room, okay, they've created more room for you on page 10. So right here, if more space is needed, use the remarks section on page 10. Now I've seen people turn in type or an additional piece of paper, because even in the remarks section, there wasn't enough room. So let's go down to page 10, and we'll scroll down there quickly. And on page 10, you can see I wrote question number 5. I have a burning sensations in my hand and feet, which is constant. The pain is constant. So now you're talking about the diagnoses, the symptoms, and the frequency of the symptoms. Now, if your pain's not constant, then you can write my pain comes and goes, and then be specific. It comes and goes on average 5 to 10 times a day, lasting for 20 to 30 minutes at a time. Then I wrote here, I take my pain pills my doctor prescribes, and they do not help relieve the pain more than 20%. And one thing you want to be careful about is, as you talk about the pain, or if you're going to mention taking pain medications, some folks will go in and say, my pain medications don't help at all. And that may be true, but then the question that will be followed up is, have you talked to your doctors about why you're even taking these pain medications if they don't help at all? Why do you continue to take them if they have zero benefit? And so that will be a question at a hearing if people say, hey, look, the pain meds don't help at all. And I think what a lot of people, kind of may not realize is if the pain medications may take the edge off. It doesn't completely relieve the pain, but it could take the edge off. And here I kind of described it, it relieves the pain. It does not help. It relieves the pain. It relieves the pain more than 20%. The pain is so bad I have to lay down one time per day for 2 hours for 15 to 30 minutes at a time. So I have to lay down one time per day for every 2 hours. Sorry. I missed the word every, so now I'd go back and handwrite that in. So one time per every 2 hours. So right here I would handwrite in the word every for 15 to 30 minutes at a time. And then I wrote, I have 2 to 4 bad days per month where I'm in bed 95% of the day. and I have to alternate between sitting, standing, and laying down every 30 to 45 minutes. The pain and the lifestyle has caused me to be depressed. So if you have mental health symptoms, make sure to put them there. I find myself in tears. So mental health, depression is a diagnosis, but crying is a symptom of depression. So I find myself in tears 1 to 2 times per week for 15 to 20 minutes at a time. So now I'm really starting as best as I can to try to paint a clear picture of why I can't work. And remember, under Social Security rules and regulations, if you can prove that you're going to miss 2 or more days of work per month, you are proven that you're going to be disabled, because missing 2 or more days of work per month due to your disabilities means you cannot sustain full-time employment, because no employer is going to let you work if you're missing that many days of work. Eventually you will be fired. So also, most employers, if not all employers, will only let you take your standard breaks, which is the 15-minute break in the morning, the 15-minute break in the afternoon, and then a 30-minute to a 1-hour break for lunch. And so if you're laying down once every 2 hours for 20 to 30 minutes at a time, your employer, A, is not going to let you lay down on the job, and B, even if they did, you'd be unproductive for 30 minutes every 2 hours. That is not a sustainable employee. And if you can prove that that's what your back pain, or in this case, for my hypothetical function report, your degenerative disc disease or my fibromyalgia and my diabetes is causing me to do, then I would be successful. So if those diagnoses and all the symptoms I'm experiencing cause me to miss 2 or more days of work per month, or I'd be off task for 10 to 15% of the workday, I would prove that I am disabled. Okay? Let's move on to question 6, or section C, which is page 4 of 10. Describe what you do from the time you wake up until you go to bed. Again, this is one of those questions that will take longer. And then you want to be as specific as you can. I wake up at 8 a.m. I make a simple meal. I take my medications and lay down for 30 minutes. I will wash my dishes for 10 minutes. Then I will sit and rest for 10 to 15 minutes. I will then watch TV in my recliner for 1 hour. I will eat a microwave lunch, and I will then let my dog out. And then I continue this on because I ran out of room. I go down to page 10, and then I'll show you what I did there on page 10. Question number 6. After my dog, I will lay down for 30 minutes. I will then watch TV for 1 to 2 hours on the recliner and eat dinner. And then I ran out of room, so I flipped it over and wrote on the back of page 10, I will then go to bed. I can only sleep for 3 to 4 hours at a time. I wake up due to pain. I will be up typically 1 hour and then go to sleep for another 1 to 2 hours. So as you can see how I describe my typical day, and let's go back to the original question here. How I describe what you do from the time you wake up until going to bed. So here they didn't ask about sleep, but I wanted to throw that in so they really could get a full 24-hour picture. The other thing that's really important is you want to be consistent. So if up here in question 5 you're talking about severe pain, you're talking about how the pain interferes with your ability to and here where I said, hey, I have to lay down for 15 to 30 minutes at a time every 2 hours, and then I have really bad days. What here they're talking about is your average day. How I tell people to describe it and how you should describe it. It's not your absolute worst day on the planet, not your best day either. Just sort of that what a typical day looks like for you, right? Not the day you're in bed 95% of the time. Although I did throw that in where I said, hey, I have 2 to 3 days like that per month. But really the time when kind of that, not your worst day, not your best day, but sort of what we call your typical or your average day. Okay. And then you want to be consistent. It's really important to be consistent. So as you're describing your typical day, you need to be consistent. If you say you lay down every 30 minutes, for 30 minutes once every 2 hours, you need to throw that into question number 6 on how you describe your typical day. Hey, by the way, don't forget, I need to lay down and I need to rest, or I need to be in my recliner. Okay? So the next ones are sort of, do you take care of anyone else, such as a wife, husband, children, grandchildren, parents, or friends? In this scenario, I said no, but there is a judge, and I've met several judges that use caregiving against our clients or against the claimants. And the reason they do that is because in many, many cases, you have to remember, we're trying to prove that you can no longer do not just the work you used to do, but in people under the age of 50, we have to prove there's no job that exists in significant numbers in the United States that you can do. And there's a job called caregiving. And so, especially if you have young children, and what I consider young is children that cannot feed themselves or sustain for themselves. Judges really hone in on this. Are you caring for them? Because if so, they can try to make sure, how can you care for your kids if you have this sort of lifestyle that you described in question 5 and 6? Especially if you have babies and you have to lift them, because babies can be 20, 25 pounds. And so they want to make sure that with all the reasons you're saying you're unable to work, that the way you live your life is consistent with that. And so, so here they ask for caregiving, like, specifically wife, husband, children, grandchildren, because there's a job out there called caregiver, okay? In-home caregiver, certified nursing assistant, caregiving at a facility, or even a job called nanny or babysitting. And so remember, we got to prove you can't do those jobs. Do you take care of pet or animals? Very similar. Are you living your life consistent with all the reasons you say you can't work? So make sure if you do say, yes, I take care of them, that you really outline specifically what very little you do to take care of them. Here I open the door and let our small dog out. I will fill, and here I was able to kind of plug it in, fill the water bowl. If you miss out on a word or it's not perfect spelling, like I've done here on a couple different occasions, don't just start all over. Don't let perfection get in the way of progress. So just go ahead and just kind of draw a little arrow and do exactly what I did. Okay, question 9. Does anyone help you care for other people or animals? Here, yes, this is really important. This is sort of, if you are primary or if you are caregiving for children or pets, you really need to lean into what kind of help do you get. So here I wrote, my wife is the primary caregiver for our dog. She walks and feeds them. Okay. And same with children. If you are disabled and you're at home and you have little ones, make sure you explain to Social Security how much help you get from extended family, grandparents, sisters, cousins, uncles, the neighbor. Okay. And then so that's really important, because if you're getting a lot of help, that means, hey, look, I am living my life consistent with all the reasons I just told you I can't work, and here's a huge cost to me, is that I don't get to care for the people that I love, my children or my pets, the way I would like to. Okay. And then number 10, what were you able to do before your illness, injuries, conditions that you can't do now? Hey, I was able to snowboard. I would go for long walks or a run, exercise. I was able to work full time, and I can't do any of those things now due to pain. Okay. So it's sort of like, what were the hobbies or the things you used to do that you can't do now? And then here it comes back to the sleep question. Do the illness, injuries, or conditions affect your sleep? Of course, I wrote yes, because that's how I describe my typical day. And I wrote, the pain wakes me up in the night. I can only sleep 3 to 4 hours at a time. And then I'm up for about 1 hour. I will go back to sleep for 1 to 2 hours, and then I'll wake up again due to pain. So I'm being very specific on how it affects my night. I'm using numbers and time here. So what you should notice is I say, hey, I can only sleep for 3 to 4 hours at a time. Versus what you don't want to say is I can't sleep very long, right? That's not very descriptive. If you use a word like I can't, or use that phrase, I can't sleep very long, or I can sometimes sleep, or rarely sleep. I don't know what I can't sleep very long is. It's not specific. So again, be specific. What about personal care? Explain how your illness, injuries, or conditions affect your ability to, now here, dress. Again, look at your symptomology. Look at that list that you created before you even started this form. So the pain makes it difficult to put my shirt on because my hands, I can't tie my own shoes. It is too difficult to bend. So I'm trying to really describe how the pain in my hands and the pain in my back and my neck and my legs really affect my ability for day to day. Because if you've gotten this far, you're likely not working full time, or you may not even be working and you're likely not working at all. And so the only thing they can see in comparison to can you work is looking at how do you live your life. Okay. And so you have to be descriptive. Bathing. I have difficulty washing my hair. The numbness in my hands. I drop items. And again, I'm being specific. I drop items 1 to 10 times per day, including soap. Care for hair. Difficulty raising my arms to brush my hair. Okay. Can I brush my hair? Yes. I'm not saying I can't do it. I'm just saying it's difficult doing it. So be careful with absolutes as well. Like I can't do this. I cannot do it. It just means, when you're using words this closely and you say you can't do it, it means you can't do it at all. And if that's actually true, then go ahead and write that. But if it's just more like, man, this really hurts to do that, you can write that. So say that this hurts to do it, or it's really difficult to do it. Okay. Shaving is difficult because again, I'm trying to be consistent and I have problems with my hands because remember earlier I talked about neuropathy in my hands and feet. So here shaving is difficult because after 5 minutes, my hands go numb and I drop the razor. Again, same with feeding myself. Okay. Difficulty holding fork, knife, spoons. 1 to 2 times a week, I drop those items. So I'm really leaning in here, explaining the difficulties I have with my hands. And frankly, if you make it this far in your first session of filling this out and you make it down to page 4, you're probably going to be experiencing some difficulties in your hands like I have. As you can notice, the handwriting goes from okay to a lot worse as we go along in this. So, and then other things I wrote, the pain makes it difficult to sit, stand, walk, and lift. Social Security really cares, especially if it's a physical disability, about your ability to sit, stand, walk, and lift. It plays a major role into that. So I like to throw that in there on a physical disability case. If it's a mental health disability case, they care about your social functioning. They care about your activities of daily living, okay? And they care about your memory, concentration, persistence, and pace. Okay. And then they care about episodes of decompensation, which means like, if you're suffering from really severe depression, decompensation would be, has it gotten so bad that it caused a suicide attempt. Okay. And that suicide attempt would be considered a decompensation. Let's go on to page 5. It says, do you need special reminders to take care of personal needs and grooming? So I wrote yes. And even though in this particular hypothetical here, or this, hypothetical questionnaire, I wrote yes, even though I'm not claiming a mental health issue, the pain interferes with my ability to focus and remember. So here I wrote, my wife will remind me to bathe. Usually I can go 3 to 4 days without taking a bath and she will remind me to do it. And so I think as people who have focused so much just on pain and their physicality of what's going on, also try to remember, how does that affect my mind? Even if you're not seeing a mental health counselor, although I would encourage you to do so you can back that up from a medical standpoint. But yeah, I think it's important. Do you need help or reminders to take your medicine? And here I wrote, yes, I use a pill box to make sure I take my medications as prescribed. It's really important that you take your medications as prescribed because Social Security can deny you for failing to take your medications as prescribed. And so whether you take too many or too little, you really have to take your medications as prescribed. And so here, you definitely want to make sure you tell them that. Tell Social Security I do that. All right, let's go down to meal prep. Question number 13A. Do you prepare your own meals? If yes, what kind of food do you prepare? And so generally speaking, with this type of physical difficulties, you're going to want to list out sort of simple things. If that's what you do, of course, you need to tell the truth. So here I wrote frozen meals, canned soup, cereal, sandwiches. Okay. I didn't write turkey dinner. I didn't write 5-course, right? And then how often do you prepare these meals? 1 to 2 times a day. How long does it take 30 minutes, but, okay? And so down below, you can see any changes in cooking habits since the illness or injuries or conditions began. It's really important that I'm consistent because the pain has interfered with my ability to be as quick as I once was before I was disabled. So I'm 50% slower now when I was not versus when I was not disabled. I can only go for 15 minutes at a time, and then I need to rest for 15 to 30 minutes. So imagine yourself as an employer, and you had an employee who was 50% slower than the average employee, and then who could only work for 15 minutes at a time, and then would need to take a break for 15 to 30 minutes. That person would be unemployable due to their disabilities, and you would ultimately end up having to let that person go. All right, let's keep going. Question number 14, house and yard work. List all the household chores you do, both indoor and outdoors, that you're able to do. So you can say none if you absolutely do none. But remember, we just talked about cooking. So cooking is a household chore. Also, going to the grocery store is a household chore. So here, just be real careful if you say none, because one thing you don't want to do is over exaggerate either, right? So you want to kind of split the hairs and just call it exactly how it is. I do my own dishes. Every once in a blue moon, I fold laundry, I do some light dusting, and I do some grocery shopping. Okay? But you really need to tell them how your disabilities and your symptoms interfere with your ability to do those chores. So how much time does it take you, and how often do you do each of these things? And again, be specific. I do these chores 1 to 3 times a week for 15 minutes at a time, and I am now 50% slower. So you can see that there's this theme that keep telling them about how much slower I am, how long things take me, and then how much I need to rest. Do you need help or encouragement to do these things? Well, before I was disabled, and my wife will finish the chores I do not complete, which is typically half the time. So I really described here how much, half the time she has to help me or finish chores for me. Okay. If you don't do house or yard work, explain why. Remember, don't leave a question blank. Here I wrote NA, which is common for meaning not applicable. All right, let's move on to page 6 of 10. Question number 15, getting around. How often do you go outside? So I go outside 1 to 2 times per week. During the pandemic, things have been, you might have gone out a lot less. And a common question in court that we're getting judges ask is, oh, well, before the pandemic, how often were you going out? Especially if your disability began before the pandemic. Which, generally speaking, you can use March of 2020 as a reference date for that, or, April of 2020 of when the pandemic sort of began. So if you're claiming disability before that point, judges will typically ask, what was your lifestyle before then? How often you go outside? So here I wrote 1 to 2 times a week. When you go out, how do you travel? Check all that apply. Self-explanatory. Walk, drive a car, ride in a car. Be careful with riding a bicycle or riding a motorcycle. Those are pretty physical activities. Obviously, if you do it, you need to put it down there. But they would likely use that against you. And if you do ride a bicycle or ride a motorcycle, you really need to explain sort of how you're able to do that or the difficulties you have in doing that. When going out, can you go out alone? Yes, I can go out alone. Do you drive? It's a yes or no question. So yes, okay. And then here on question number 16, if you do any shopping, do you shop? So here I wrote in stores and by computer. And then I either go to grocery and describe what you shop for, which here I just wrote groceries and clothing. It might be household goods. Amazon is a popular way for many people to shop. So that's why I did in stores and by computer. How often do you shop and how long does it take? So in the store, I wrote, at the store, I will shop for 30 to 45 minutes. However, I use a motorized cart and I always go with my wife. So I'm able to go out on my own, but I don't, okay, to the store. And then here it says, I will shop on Amazon for household items one time per month for 10 minutes. And so what they're really looking at here is no one cares how often you actually shop. They just want to know, are you able to do the things that go along with shopping? So being on a computer, using your hands, and I just wrote all these problems I have with my hands, so I want to be specific. I only do it once a month for 10 minutes, okay, max. And it's not a constant typing when you're on Amazon. So sometimes you're using your mouse, so your hands get to rest. And then at the store, are you able to walk around the store? Are you able to lift groceries? That's what they care about. If you're at the grocery store, they get to know, are you able to bend, squat, kneel, and lift? A gallon of milk weighs 8.5 pounds. So that's why I threw in, I use the motorized cart. Or, if you use a cane, you can say I use my cane to walk around the store. Or sometimes I'll go to the store and I'll just sit in the car and wait for my wife to come back. Are you able to pay bills? Here I wrote yes. Count change, yes. Handle savings account, yes. Use a check or money order, yes. If you answer no, you need to explain why. Could be memory and concentration issues, which is fine. But are you still able to do it? You got to be a little bit careful too. What could potentially happen is that you actually win you do win your Social Security case, and then here you just wrote on a form that you can't pay your bills, count change, handle a savings account, or use a checkbook or money order. They may want you to have a representative payee to help handle all your bills. So that could be used against you in that way. 17B, has your ability to handle money changed since the illness or injuries or conditions began? Yes. So I think, if you look at 17A, it's kind of, are you able to pay bills? And that's just black and white, yes or no, right? Not, are you having difficulty? Where B is more like, well, what difficulties have come about since you've become disabled? And here I wrote, the pain has affected my concentration. I will sometimes bounce a check because I lose focus on the balance and the math. So the pain gets I might write a check and the pain gets so bad I need to go lay down. And then I didn't really check the balance, and then ultimately that check bounces. But generally speaking, I can still pay bills. Okay, so let's move on to the next page. So hobbies and interests. What are your hobbies and interests now? So here I wrote watching TV. It's pretty much all that I do. Remember, if these are hobbies and interests that you're currently doing, and so you got to be a little bit careful that your hobbies, if you do more hobbies, like if I wrote down I love knitting, that's not going to be consistent with someone who just complained about dropping things all the time or having problems, severe neuropathy and pain and numbness in my hands. If I wrote down training for a marathon, again, that wouldn't be consistent with all the back pain. So be careful. How often and how well do you do these things? So here I watch TV daily, typically 2 to 3 times a day for 30 to 60 minutes at a time. I will lose focus on programs after 30 minutes due to pain. So it is different. Even watching TV is different for me now than it once was. So describe any changes in these activities since the illness, injuries, or conditions began. And here again, concentrating on a TV program is difficult due to severe pain. Okay, so be careful with the hobbies and interest ones. Make sure it's consistent. Any hobbies you're doing is consistent with all the reasons you say you can't work. Social activities, number 19 on page 7 to 10. How to spend time with others. So, literally, how are you spending time with others? And so others is interesting because it's not saying just friends. So how I interpret this is to also include my wife or the people I live with. So you have to check in person, right? On the phone or texting. And then it asks you just describe the kind of things you do with others, usually with my wife, and we will sit and visit while watching TV. I will text friends 1 time per week. How often do you do these things? I watch TV with my wife 1 time per day for 30 to 60 minutes. Again, it's about being consistent, throughout this form, making sure that hey, look, I have difficulty sitting for 30 to 60 minutes. My back isn't flared. I may have to lay down. So Again, being consistent and being specific. List the places you go on a regular basis. So the places my wife and I go are to the grocery store. Do you need to reminded to go places? No, because usually my wife is with me. So how often do you go and how much do you take part? I go one time per week and I drive the cart, meaning the cart at the grocery store. So here, I should have been more specific. I should have I drive the grocery cart and my wife loads it up. Do you need someone to accompany you? Yes, my wife. She will lift the groceries and carry them. So Social Security loves the grocery store questions, especially at the hearing level, because they know a gallon of milk weighs 8.5 pounds, but how much does a bag of groceries weigh? And the more groceries you're carrying in and out of your house, the more they'll use that against you. So again, here my wife, she's with me. She'll lift the groceries, or I see folks put down their neighbor goes with them, or their cousin or brother or whoever, and they get the help. Okay, so 19D, do you have any problems getting along with family members, friends, or neighbors, or others? If yes, explain. Here I wrote yes. And so even though in this particular report I didn't write down any mental health issues at the beginning when I talked about, degenerative disc disease, fibromyalgia, and diabetes. Those were the 3 core diagnoses. But what stems from that? And here I talk about depression. When I'm in this much pain, I'm super irritable as well. So here I wrote, due to pain, I am much more irritable and will have an anger outburst towards my family 1 to 2 times per month. And I was even specific on how often they happen. And frankly, now looking at this, you could write my anger outburst lasts for 15 to 20 minutes at a time. And it involves yelling and screaming. And sometimes in court, we want to know what that anger outburst looks like. So it's yelling and screaming. Sometimes it's picking up items, throwing them across the room, or slamming down items, and things like that. So 19E, describe any changes in the social activity since the illness, injuries, or conditions began. I wrote, I'm more isolated and tend to stay at home. I have not seen my friends in over a year. And the judge, if you get to a judge level, they may end up asking, how often were you seeing your friends before the pandemic? Because generally speaking, most people were at home during the pandemic. And so here, information about your abilities. Check any of the following items that your illness, injuries, or conditions affect. So here, as you can see, based off those 3 illnesses I mentioned, the diagnoses of, again, degenerative disc disease, fibromyalgia, and diabetes, I wrote lifting, squatting. Squatting is, think of that about a football player taking a knee, or squatting. Bending from the waist down, standing, reaching. Reaching is in all directions, so not just in front of you. When you're driving, you're reaching. When you're typing, you're reaching. Okay? Walking, self-explanatory. Sitting, kneeling. Kneeling is more like the football player. Squatting is 2 knees straight down. Kneeling is 1 knee on the ground. Talking and hearing, well, I can talk and I can hear okay, so I'm not going to check that. Stair climbing, yes, I have problems with that. Seeing, no. Memory, which talked about earlier in all my examples. Completing tasks, of course. Concentration. Understanding, okay. And so understanding would be someone giving you some information and maybe you're not able to focus it and understand it, so that's been affected. Following instructions, and following instructions is written instructions and verbal instructions. So with following instructions, what they really care about is 1, 2, 3 tasks. Here's step 1, step 2, step 3, and then using your hands and getting along with others, which is what I explained. Please explain how your illnesses or conditions affect each of the items you checked. For example, you can only lift how many pounds, or you can walk and how far. So you're gonna have to forgive me. I didn't get a chance to fill this out. But here, what you want to talk about is lifting, and what they care about is sort of in increments of 10 pounds at the max, 20, then 20 pounds, and then 25, 50. So how much can you lift? And then, and how I think of it is how much can you do it before it's going to just knock you down before it triggers more pain. So Yeah, if in a moment's notice, if it was a complete emergency and you had to lift 50 pounds, sure, maybe, of course. But what will that do to you? What I'm asking about is, and what this form and how you should answer this is, how much can you lift without triggering more pain? Okay. So lifting should, for me in this hypothetical form, lifting would be limited to 5 to 10 pounds. And you can give a range. Squatting. I can't squat anymore. Bending. Severe pain when bending. Standing. How long can you stand? In minutes. And when Social Security asks about standing, they're not talking about just in one place. They're talking about standing like in a line at a grocery store. So, again, put that in minutes, 5-10 minutes. Reaching. Again, reaching. Severe pain in reaching, I can do it. And Social Security wants to know how often you can reach. Is it? And they use words like occasionally and frequently, but they have very specific definitions. Occasionally is less than 1/3 of an 8-hour day, not straight, but 2.5 hours out of an 8-hour day. You could reach in front of you and be okay. That's called occasionally. Frequently is 2/3 out of an 8-hour day, so 6 hours out of an 8-hour, you could reach in front of you and be okay. And then constant would be like you're constantly reaching out in front of you for all 8 hours. So walking, how far can you walk in city blocks before you need to stop and rest? Sitting is how long can you sit in a typical office chair before you would need to stand up and lay down. And again, with the walking, the reaching, the standing, the sitting, the kneeling, when you describe the length and the time you can do it for, you need to be specific. 15 minutes, 10 pounds, 5 minutes. Okay, stair climbing. I can only climb three steps. Memory. We talked about the memory earlier, but how it affects my ability to remember what's on TV after 30 minutes. Completing tasks. Well, I'm in pain, so I need to sit and rest after 15 minutes. Concentration. The pain interferes with my ability to focus on balancing a checkbook. Same with following instructions and using hands. I drop items, getting along with others. We gave that example of an anger outburst. And then understanding, and then how, the check the mark understanding, just how it all kind of interplays with the pain. Okay. Then the next question, are you right or left-handed? Pretty self-explanatory. So how far can you walk before you need to stop and rest? Here I wrote 2 blocks. If you do have to rest, how long do you rest before you can resume walking? I wrote 5 to 15 minutes. And then for how long can you pay attention? I wrote 30 to 60 minutes on a bad day, 2 to 4 times per month, not at all. So on a bad day, I can't focus at all, and that happens 2 to 4 times a month. Do you finish what you start? I wrote, and here what they wrote, for example, conversation chores, reading, watching a movie. Yes, but only 50% of the time. So I can finish when I start, but really only half the time. How well do you follow instructions? I wrote, if they are simple, up to 1 to 3 things in the instructions, I can do it. How well do you follow spoken instruction? Only 1 at a time, because my memory is horrible. And then how well do you get along with authority figures, police, bosses, landlords, or teachers? Here I wrote generally okay. I don't have any experience yelling at any of those folks since I've become disabled. Have you been fired or laid off from a job because of problems getting along with other people? Here I wrote no, but if that's a problem for you, hit yes and explain like, oh, I yelled at my boss and he fired me. Okay. And then you need to give the name of the employer. All right, let's move on. How well do you handle stress? And I wrote not well. My pain has made me more irritable. How well do you handle change in a routine? Not well. Have you noticed any unusual behaviors or fears? Yes. I'm afraid this is what the rest of my life will be like. Do you use any of the following? Check all that apply. Walker, cane, glasses, or contacts. Which of these were prescribed by a doctor? I wrote all. It's really important if you are using any assistive devices to help move around that you do get a prescription, especially at the court level. judges will ask, was that prescribed? And if it wasn't, it's almost as if they don't believe that you need it. So if you're using a walker, if you're using crutches or a wheelchair or cane, make sure that any of the things you have were prescribed. And then they'll want to know, when was it prescribed? And if you don't know the exact date, do your best guess or ask your doctor, when was this walker prescribed? Okay. And then when do you need these things? And here I wrote, when I walk more than 25 feet. So here, I gave the month and the year, but I don't remember when my glasses were first prescribed. So, I've been wearing glasses since I was a kid. So I just wrote in the 80s, right? But, especially if you're using a walker, cane, or a wheelchair, you're going to want to get the exact date that those things were prescribed. And your doctor can help you out with that. And then here again, this is really important. The last question is the medication. Do you currently take any medications for your illness or injury? I wrote yes. And then we can win a case on negative side effects of medications alone. So if you're having severe negative side effects of your medications, so for example, let's say you are taking medications and you're not experiencing any pain, but the side effects are so over the top because it just hits you like a ton of bricks, we can win a case even though you're not experiencing pain, but the negative side effects of the medication. So for example, here I wrote oxycodone, which is a common pain narcotic, same with tramadol, but the side effects are fatigue, nausea, headache, sleepiness, insulin for the diabetes, sweating and blurred vision. Make sure to write down those. But if the fatigue, nausea, and headaches are so overwhelming that you find yourself sleeping, 50% of the workday, we can win a case just on that. So then that wraps it up. You're going to want to head and put your name, address, the date that you filled this out, and get this in. So a couple things, 46 minutes into making this video and giving you instructions on this, the big takeaways is a lot of this is subjective. It is my opinion that this isn't going to be the make it of your case, but it can be used to break your case. I have seen this form come up in Social Security hearings. It doesn't come up often. I would say less than 5% of the Social Security hearings. The judges will bring it up. And what they do is that they will look at the date that you filled it out. And in a lot of cases, when you're testifying, especially at the court level, they're going to want to know how long you've been experiencing symptoms that's bad. And they'll use this form as a tool to impeach you. So for example, if you're doing a ton of yard work or you're doing hobbies, they'll bring it up and say, hey, look, back when you filled this form out, you said under the hobbies that you were riding a motorcycle for fun, or you were playing sports for fun. How come today in court, when you're testifying to me, that you can barely move? And so then the judge will raise a big eyebrow. Again, what I would strongly encourage you to do is anytime you fill out a form, you keep a copy for yourself. If you sent it to us first, we will have a scanned copy of your form as part of your file, as we scan all our forms and all our clients' mail electronically, and we store it in a highly secure digital database. And so if you ever need this form kind of to refresh your memory along the way, you'll have a copy of it, but we will definitely have a copy of it if you mailed it to us first. And I would budget, and again, I filled this out and he did it straight, and it took me about 2.5 hours to get this thing filled out. And lucky again, look, I'm an attorney. I fill out forms all the time. And so this form still took me 2 hours to fill it out. So give yourself some time. Don't beat yourself up if it's taking too long, and give it your best shot. I hope this video was helpful and instructions. If you do have questions, feel free to give us a call. We're happy to answer any questions regarding, how to fill this out. But watch this video, rewind it, go back, go through each question, and it's here as a resource for you. All right. Well, thank you very much for letting us represent you. I know you've given us a lot of trust, and I take that trust very seriously. So thank you, and have a great day. Bye.